welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Kyan, and this is Kyan is Booked. We're gonna do our January What I Read 2025 edition. So this is my first wrap up of the year. This one is gonna be a little different, and I want to say I'm gonna do this type of wrap up every single month, but I don't know if the intensity of reading vlogs is gonna continue. But for this month, I did release 2 reading vlogs that will encompass 4 of these books. And then I had a live show for The Good, the Bad, the Smutty, which is the book club that I run with Jess over on Instagram. She's Love to Love Books. I'll have her linked back down below. But I read 3 books for that. So that's 7 books right there that I've already really talked in depth about. So I'll definitely leave the links below on how you can get to those vlogs or the live show that we did. I'll talk to you guys about the ratings, but I'm really not going to go in depth to those books in this because I really want to give the books that didn't get read in a reading vlog their moment to shine, because I read a lot of really good books this month and I'm really excited to talk about them. So let's start off with a banger. I have the Empire standalone reading vlog that finally went up in January. And I say finally because I read the majority of the Empire series in the beginning of 2024. And I'm not really sure, like, did I not want to read this couple? I'm not sure, but the Empire of Lust, which is the last book in the series, I gave it 4 stars. It just took me a while to want to sit down and read that second chance love story. And I think it was too, because it was very second chance. And I knew that the characters were going to have to go through way too much before they ended up together. So I was like, am I really ready to read this? But in January, apparently was. I gave Empire of Lust, like I said, 4 stars. You can read it, you can hear my thoughts in this reading vlog right here. It's Empire Standalone. All 4 of the books are included. My favorite book comes earlier in the series. However, I did really enjoy this one. So I definitely recommend the series if you haven't read this from Rena Kent yet. The second flute reading vlog I put up, also Rena Kent inspired, was the Deception trilogy. And guys, if you know me, we've chatted about it, you've seen my posts, I am obsessed with this trilogy. We are back in the mafia world. This follows Adrian. He is the strategist for the mafia. He's very high up, very close to the Pacan. And this is the story of Adrian and his wife, Leah. And it is a roller coaster ride. So many different plot twists that Rena throws our way, especially the cliffhanger to the end of book 1. And if you know, you know. And if you don't, you should definitely read the series, because as of right now, Adrian is my favorite Rena Kent hero, which is saying a lot because she has a lot of super obsessive, possessive men that we have all loved. But there was just something about Adrian and the things that he said and the way that he acted and his love for Leah that just pushed him to the top of my list. So for in-depth thoughts here, I did give Vow of Deception, Tempted by Deception, and Consumed by Deception 5 stars. This is a 5-star trilogy from Rena Kent, and I had the time of my life. Next up is The Good, the Bad, the Smutty December and January book club picks. So we usually do a combined show for December and January simply because it's the holiday season in December, blah, blah, blah. It's hard to schedule. Jess has stuff going on. I have stuff going on. So we did 3 books for this live show. The December book pick, which was Dear Monster Claus, and then we did Forbidden Part 1 and Forbidden Part 2, which was by Amelia Emerson, and those are a megaverse. So I gave all 3 of these books 4 stars. If you're looking for some more in-depth information on it, I will link the live show down below. We save all of them onto the Instagram page, so please feel free to go. Definitely enjoyed them. Would recommend them to anybody looking for a monster romance that's really cute, and then also too looking for an Omegaverse duet to kind of dive into. Okay. Let me double check and make sure that that's it for the vlogs. I'm pretty sure. Like I said, a good portion of these books were live show or vlogs, so definitely wanted to go ahead and have that conversation. All right, so I'm not gonna go based off of how I read these in the month. I'm gonna go in groupings. So we're gonna start off with the solo books. So the ones that aren't necessarily tied to me binging a series in the month, right? So first book we're going to talk about is Pray Tell by Amanda Richardson. This was also on my hopefuls list right here. This was on my hopefuls list. I ended up reading 6, 7, 8, 9 of the 10. So not horrible. We can definitely do better next month though. Anyways, so I read Pray Tell. This was not necessarily a second chance romance because they never really got off in the first place. Like they never started because he's older. She is his best friend's younger sister. He stepped more into like a fatherly role when her parents died and they moved in with his family. So it felt kind of weird. And then by the time he really considered having a relationship with her, he had already pushed her away. So he kind of just felt like, okay, whatever. So this one was kind of up and down. Like it didn't really leave me with anything like wild or anything like that. Like it was just, you know, nothing to write home about, I guess. I did give it 4 stars because in the moment, like I did enjoy the story. I did enjoy the characters, but it really wasn't any different from just like the standard, oh, we can't be together because of your brother. And like I know I care for you and I'm going to kiss you and I'm going to care for you, but like, we just can't be together. So after a while, it was just kind of like, okay, bro, we get it. Like either you're like actually in love with her and want to be with her, or you're going to let her move on. So that's Pray Tell. Next up, you have Cash by Jessica Peterson. Oh, wait, I do have a reading vlog for this. Okay, so popping in the reading vlog here, my friend Jody put this on her, TBR for me, like reading my books to besties TBR. So she put this on there for me. I am a new Jessica Peterson fan. I'm actually pretty excited because I ordered special editions of Wyatt and of Cash because I'll be seeing her in March. Which is literally next month because I'm filming this in February. So I'll be seeing her in March. I absolutely love Cash. I gave it 4 stars. You know, it was like the start of what is going to be a series of standalones of like Cowboy Brothers. I thought it was a great start. I really liked Cash. I definitely identify with him as like being the oldest and kind of feeling this invisible weight that nobody puts on you, but like you feel like everybody puts on you. So I really enjoyed this one. And like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I will link the reading vlog down below. Then I read Again the Magic by Lisa Kleypas. So this is the book 0 for the Wallflower series, and I'm pretty bummed because this is literally the only one that I have that doesn't have the step back. So this is like one of the newer versions, but whatever. So there was a read along that happened on Christy Reads a Lot's channel last, we'll call it like fall. And they read a book a month. I don't know what I was doing, but I didn't keep up. So like now I'm trying to read this because I want to read the Ravenels with them. So, oh, that's not my hair, it's the jar. Anyways, this follows Lady Aileen Marsden and McKenna, John McKenna. So she's a lady of class. He is not a lady of class. Well, it's not a lady, but he is a gentleman who's a servant who was abandoned very young in life. And he, and so he was essentially a bastard, brought to the estate, fell in love with the daughter. Something happens. He leaves. It's years later. He's come back to seek his revenge. But you know, all that time has done is just made them realize like how much they really do love each other and care for each other. And like once McKenna gets his head out of his rear end, the love he has for this woman is so beautiful. And I was obsessed with their love story. There was just something so sweet about their second chance and something so just beautiful when they finally let their guards down and were honest with each other. And chef's kiss. I gave this one, let me not lie to you, I did give this one 5 stars. Okay, I was pretty sure I did, but I was like, trust but verify. So I give this one 5 stars. I definitely recommend it. I'm moving on to the second book in the Wallflower series. I have read that one, but it was a couple years ago, so I'm gonna reread it because don't remember. But really solid start to the series. Really love the dynamic between her and McKenna. And I'm really hoping that her brother also ends up with a story later on this series. All right, so Again the Magic. Talked about that. We're getting there. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna talk about it, okay? So Onyx Storm came out in January. I took the day off so that I could read the book. I'm happy I did because I didn't want to fall into the same trap as I did for Iron Flame, where I didn't read it in time and then everybody's opinions started to overwhelm me and then I didn't end up reading it, and then when I did end up reading it, I let those opinions influence me. I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was a beautiful love letter from Xaden to Violet. I think it's setting up a really, really impactful book 4 and just a really, like, I'm really excited for book 4 and 5. I think that this book really redeemed a lot of things that happened in Iron Flame. And while I wasn't the biggest fan of Iron Flame, I need to remind myself, and probably also some of you, that this is only book 2 and 3, right, of the series. And fantasy series are difficult to read when they're not finished because a lot of that oomph comes from the finale, which we don't have yet. And right now we just have a bunch of questions and we're like, oh, she gave us answers but more questions. Yeah, of course she did, because it's only the 3rd book in the series. So I gave Onyx Storm 5 stars. I really liked it. I don't want to say it redeemed the series for me, but it really gave me the same type of feelings that I had when I read Fourth Wing and I became obsessed with this world and I became obsessed with Xaden and Violet. And it really just gave that back to me. So I'm very, very excited to see what is coming next in the next 2 books. And I also want to give a couple shout outs. So first off, shout out to Riddick. Didn't know that I needed his level of humor in my life, but it really cured a lot of feelings for me that week when I read this. He was the unsung hero for this book. We love him. We stan him. Taryn, still my man, or my main dragon. I don't know. I love him. There's really not a lot you're ever going to be able to tell me about him because I really feel like no matter what happens, he's always going to be ride or die Violet because he sees something in her or sees something or knows something that's going to happen. And he knows no matter what else blows up in his life, the relationship between him and his writer is most important because of what they're going to do as a team, right? Because, you know, we're coming up with a lot of different ideas here. And I'm not going to get into it because I don't want this to be spoilery, but I just really love Taryn. I love Andarna too, and a couple of scenes that happened in this book literally broke my heart for her because she is, in my mind, just such a gentle soul, even though she's like a sassy teenager and we love her for it, but she is such a gentle soul. And there were moments in this book that were really difficult for me to read and like really difficult for me to be a part of because I'm just like, no, not Andarna, not their relationship. It was hard to read some of those scenes. I know it's being set up for something more, like I know guys, but it was still very difficult for me. And I really just loved how like beautifully Xaden loved Violet in this book. I really do. Like, I think that this is the first book, because in Iron Flame he was still very closed off, and in Fourth Wing they were still like battling everything out and trying to figure out where both of them were in this thing between the two of them, once their dragons became mated and stuff. But I think this is like the first time we've really seen, like, we know Xaden's obsessed with her and we know Xaden's in love with her, but like he didn't hide from that in this book, and it was just, I loved it. So I will say that Onyx Storm definitely has me very excited for book 4. And all I'm going to say to you people who are like out on the internet right now complaining about not having dates and stuff like that for book 4, you obviously didn't grow up reading the Harry Potter series as it was being published by a traditional publisher and buying the book, reading it in a day, and waiting 2.5 years for the next book. Okay, if you've read those books, then you know that there's some serious cliffhangers at the end of them, and like we just chilled and waited like it was no big deal. You have like 1,000 books on your TBR, like you will survive, okay? We're all waiting for this book. We're all waiting to see what's going to happen next, and we can wait together and also read some really cool books at the same time. Next up, I read Mind Games by Nora Roberts. I am in Jess from Peace Love Books, XO. From Peace Love Books, Patreon book club for Nora Roberts. We read Nora Roberts every month. And this one was published in 2024, actually. So this is one of her newer releases. I listened to it on audio. I did really enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. It's definitely has paranormal aspects because there's like a psychic connection between the main character and the character who killed her parents and is in prison for it, which was probably more believable than the fact that she had a crush on this guy in like a big band or whatever, and it was her childhood crush, and he just happened to move next door to her in this small town. So, but anyways, I really liked it. He was obviously our male main character. So it follows Lucy. They go to their grandmother's house to No, Thea, because Lucy's grandma. So it follows Thea. Thea is the one who is psychic, kind of sees things through dreams, like sees other types of things, like she just gets visions randomly. And her grandmother both get a vision of her parents being murdered, so she was able to help put the person away who murdered her parents. And so obviously they move to, to their grandmother's house to live with their grandmother because their parents have obviously died. So sad because it's her and her younger brother. Then she grows up to be somebody who who creates video games and things like that. And like I said, I can't remember the male main character's name right now, but he does move in next to her and he was her childhood crush, and it was just a wild turn of events. So next up, I continued my Rena Kent binge. Oops. We have a lot of sex going on. I continued my Rena Kent binge, and I got 2 books into the Monster Trilogy. And not a hater or anything like that. I just got really busy at the end of the month trying to turn stuff in for work. So I finished the 3rd book in February. So the reading vlog will be viewable after I post it in February. But anyways, these are special editions that I have of the series. I don't want to say too much about it just because obviously it's going to be featured in the reading vlog, but I did give Blood on My Monster, which is book 1, 5 stars, and Lies on My Monster, which is book 2, and that's 5 stars as well. I really like, this is by Roses and Thorns exclusive editions. I like the fact that it's numbered on the side, right? And I really like how the spines, well, when I line them up. Anyways, I like how the spines match. And if you look at the front, everything on these books, like the front of these books, ties into this story itself, which I absolutely love. And then on the back, it has quotes. And then, of course, we have sprayed edges. So I definitely love these editions, and I'm really excited that I have them. I was missing book 2, but I just purchased it off Pango, so now I have a full set. But this is 5 stars so far. I'm not gonna lie to you, I know I just told you Adrian from the Deception trilogy was my favorite, but Curiel he's definitely giving him a run for my money. So we know Curiel and Alexandra, aka Alexander, because she's pretending to be a man. In fact, Curiel's male bodyguard. We know them from Ray and Kyle's trilogy, actually, because they're a part of like the same mafia world, if you will. And we knew before we went into this trilogy that she was pretending to be a man because of something that happens in Ray's trilogy. So I will link that for you as well in case you want to go back and watch that. She was my reigning favorite until I started these 2 trilogies. So this follows him. He goes over to Russia and joins the military, takes a good portion of his father's guards with him, only to be brought back home to take over because he's the heir, so to take over the family line because his father dies. Right? None of this is like, I'm not spoiling anything for you, right? But the problem is there's a younger brother, and there's a whole situation, and there's a mom that hates him, and there's a younger sister so mad at him. And then there's the whole situation of he finally finds out that Alexander is Alexandra, and then there might be beef between their 2 families. So that's all I'm going to tell you. Just know 5 stars, and then you'll have to watch my February wrap up and or the reading vlog to find out what I rate the 3rd book, because I am actually very close to finishing it. So then it wouldn't be a wrap up if I wasn't reading JD Robb for our next favorites video. So if you're new to the channel, I am a huge JD Robb fan, and JD Robb is actually the pen name for Nora Roberts. This is an ongoing series that started in 1995, and this series follows Lieutenant Eve Dallas and her husband Rorik, and then their family and friends and the people who work on Eve's team and the people who works on Rorik's team. But, you know, as the characters come in and out, even Eve and Rorik are our main focus because they are our female main character and our male main character. So I did a whole favorites video and a breakdown of the entire series. I will link it as well because it goes from 1995 to 2004. And so now I'm kind of just rounding out the last couple of books I needed to reread in order to do 2005 to 2014. So the first book I read was Delusion and Death, and I gave this one 5 stars. That rating didn't change at all. So this right here is a wild ride, and it's 5 stars because the murder happens in a bar and 80 people are murdered at one time. right? So kind of like the hints of domestic terrorism, maybe, but then it turns out to be something way more than that. And of course, Eve is determined to try and save as many people as she can, because she knows somebody who wants to kill as many people as this person is killed is not going to just stop at 80 people. Like, obviously they have bigger intentions. So 5 stars for this one. Absolutely love this one. Next one I read was Calculated in Death, and this one I gave 4 stars. And this one is the conspiracy theory of how a bunch of different random people are murdered, but really it all comes back to one group of people and one person who is murdering for the sake of trying to cover up something that has already happened. And I don't want to say too much more because this one's actually really easy to spoil, and I wouldn't want to accidentally do that. So I gave Calculated in Death 4 stars. My neighbors are so annoying. Anyways, Concealed in Death is the next book that I read. I gave this one 5 stars. And hang on a second. Okay, this one is such a hard hitter for me, and I block it out every time because this is one where if you were to ask me like one of my favorite storylines, this would be one of my favorite storylines, but I block out which one it is because it is a really difficult story to read. So Rorik buys a new building, and he's there with like the designer and the person who's going to be demoing the building, and he's like, hey, do you want to take like the first swing on the demo? And Rorik's like, absolutely. So he like rips through this wall and he finds 2 skeletons, right? And then what starts as 2 ends up being 12. And it's a story of how this sanctuary for girls was turned into a killing field, and how it ties back to the original family who started the sanctuary, but who done it basically. And it's just a really, really sad story of loss, and how it's been like 14, 15 years, and he was going back to these families, and these families know that their loved ones are dead, but until Eve steps foot on their doorstep, like there's still that hope, right? So here she is, there's 12 different families, and she essentially like breaks their hearts and is like, hey, like we finally found your sister or your daughter or your niece or whomever that person ended up being to that person. And it is definitely one of the hardest hitting books in the series, and definitely one that, while I love to read it, it is still really hard to read because of how hard hitting it is. Next up, we have Thankless in Death, and I gave this one 5 stars. So the son goes crazy because he feels like his parents should be paying his way through life, and then he decides to wrong everybody who has wronged him. And that's what this book is about. And I gave it 5 stars because it's one of my favorite like psychological cases, because Eve really has to dive down and really has to think about like, okay, like if I'm gonna get in the head of this killer, like what would I be looking for? And so that's what I really love about this one. Then I read Festive in Death, which I gave 4 stars. And this one, so it's this guy, and his name is Trey Ziegler, and he's bludgeoned to death in his bedroom, and Eve and Peabody slowly uncovered this scheme. He was a personal trainer, and this scheme of how he would take advantage of women and be paid for like home services and turn it into something way more than that. And he would use supplements to convince them that being together is a good idea. And then it turns out to be someone who found out about his scheme and decided he didn't need to be a part of the world anymore. It is definitely a very interesting one. I really enjoyed kind of the journey we went on to get to where we are. Then I read Obsession in Death, and so it says, show me it matters or I can't be your true friend. And these are killings based off of this person's perceived relationship with Eve. So they believe that they are her one and true friend, and so they start killing people who have wronged her with the ultimate goal of being friends with her or something more later on. And it's super interesting, kind of like the concept of somebody like, I don't want to say absolutely losing it, but definitely losing it a little bit and enough to start murdering people on Eve's behalf. And of course, Eve is like furious about it. She goes, I can't even believe someone would think that this is what I want. So Definitely a very interesting concept. I absolutely loved it. And the final in-depth book that I read was Devoted in Death. So this is the story of two serial killers who start in a very small town on one side of the country and kill their way all the way across the country to New York. And it's Eve's team and etc. trying to find, because there are two victims currently who have been taken, trying to find those victims before they're murdered and taking down both of these killers because what? It's a very interesting thing too, because it almost seems like the guy is coerced into doing it with her, but you know, they both probably could benefit from some therapy, and it's definitely a very interesting concept. I really thought it was a super interesting crime, and that's what this series, like, I'm always gonna love Eve, I'm always gonna love Rourke, I'm always gonna love the secondary cast. But for me, with this series, it really comes down to, like, is the crime still fresh? Is it still interesting? And I felt like this is really fresh. I really liked how many different agencies had to work this. I liked one of the new characters, Banner, who was introduced in this one, and how hard he was fighting for the victim from his town. And I just thought it was interesting, the idea of somebody, like a couple, killing their way across to New York City, thinking they weren't going to get caught in New York City because it was a big city. Anyways, ended up being their downfall. So definitely 5 stars for this one. So those are the 21 books that I read in the month of January. I think it was a pretty good start to the year. So let me know down below if you have any favorites or any books that you've read or any that are on your TBR. And hopefully one of these days I'm going to convince some of you to start reading the In-Depth series by J.D. Robb, because I think everybody should read it and or listen to it on audiobook. So without further ado, thank you so much. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I would love to have you as a book bestie. And as always, friends, I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.